Hello, good evening. I'm pleased to give this presentation at IEEE IRI 2020 virtually. This presentation was recorded on August 4th, 2020. I'm Bhavani from the University of Texas at Dallas, and I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so I've got 18 minutes to give this presentation, and this conference is Information Reuse and Integration with Data Science, and my talk is Artificial Intelligence and Data Science Governance, Roles and Responsibilities at the C-level, the corporate level, and the board. So the reason I chose this topic is because we are talking about information and data, right? So this information and data, and also it's data science. So we're using AI, machine learning techniques. And so we need governance for this information, whether we are reusing or whether we are integration, the information and also the techniques we are using, we need governance. And so many of the papers that are usually presented in these highly technical conferences like IRI are sort of very, very technical, right? So in fact, I gave a keynote address, so I will be giving, depending on when this paper is going to be presented, on SecAI, integrating AI and cybersecurity for Internet of Transportation systems, which was sort of more technical talk. But it's equally important to look at the risks involved, the governance of the various information and the tools and techniques, and also the various people involved with this governance. So that is what I'm going to talk about today. And I've got 18 minutes. I've already spent a minute or two. So I'm going to go through them. I've got about 20 charts, so 1 minute a chart. Okay, so introduction, developments in AI and data science. And then the main topic, AI and data science governance, security and AI. And then what are the responsibilities of the corporate officers and the board? And then conclusion. Okay, so we know that AI and data science are affecting every aspect of our lives, healthcare, finance, everything. Sophisticated machine learning techniques with a focus on deep learning are being applied successfully to detect cancer, to make the best choices for investments, to determine the most suitable routes for driving and managing the electricity in our homes. So while AI has become central practically every industry, applications of data science are also exploding because data is everywhere. Large amounts of data being collected, stored, managed, processed, analyzed. For example, machine learning techniques, also referred to as data mining by many, are being applied to the data gathered so that intelligent decisions can be made. And we believe that AI and data science essentially intersect at machine learning, because AI has much more in the sense that they also have areas like planning and automated reasoning, and data science also has data cleaning and data warehousing. So they are both very broad and intersect at machine learning. Okay, so while advances in both AI and data science are greatly advanced humanity, United Nations is very involved in an initiative called AI for Good. In addition, there's also concern that AI and DS may be used for wrong purposes, right? Robots killing people without any reason, and AI algorithms being biased and not being fair, resorting to discriminatory practices. This means organizations must focus on how AI can be used to enhance the business of the corporation without AI being biased or unfair or causing harm. They need to also consider the risks involved. What are the risks of using AI? What are the risks of gathering all this data and information and reusing the information and integrating the information and sharing the information? This means that corporations' AI and data science strategies must be discussed at the highest level. So essentially, you can't have data, all these governance and risk aspects to be discussed among technical folks, right? Everybody must be involved, especially at the highest level. And do we need a chief AI, artificial intelligence / data science officer, right? Many companies are also, some companies I should say, are having chief data officer. Should their roles be merged? These are some questions. Okay, so what are the developments? Very briefly, while the origins of AI go back to the paper by Alan Turing in 1951, Can Machines Think? Early database systems in the late 1950s were based on the network model called codicil. Both fields developed independently, but around late 1970s, they both started to merge. So AI, and then in the 1970s, a lot of the focus in database systems was on relational data, but in the late 1970s, they both started to merge. So in the early 1990s, statistical reasoning techniques borrowed from statistics, machine learning borrowed from ML, were being applied to data to extract useful patterns and predict new trends. So this came to be known as data mining. And in the 2000s, the AI researchers were trying to advance machine learning, and they started looking at deep learning, right? So neural networks in multiple layers. And so came the concept of deep learning. Around that time, it was also possible to use cloud and high performance computing to manage and analyze data, right? We had data warehousing, data management, data mining, analytics, all merged into data science. Both AI and data science, they're both playing major roles in the industry. As I said, healthcare, finance, manufacturing. The data scientists collect the data, clean and collect the data, they structure, they analyze, they apply various statistical reasoning, and so on. AI scientists learn from the data, apply machine learning, especially deep learning, make predictions, and detect, say, early stage cancers. So they're both sort of merging, but one has very much a data focus, the other very much has a learning focus. Okay, so now we come to the main topic, AI and data science governance. AI governance is a responsibility of the corporate executives and the board to ensure that the company follows all the processes and methods required for incorporating AI into their business operations. So, is the company using AI techniques have these techniques been tested? Do they show bias? Are they fair? Do they harm the society? Are the AI systems evaluated, certified, accredited? Now, there are some platforms. There's some work actually on governance, AI governance. For example, Google has done some really good work. They have examined the following areas that are part of AI governance that advance legal and ethical aspects of AI. So they talk about explainability standards, fairness appraisal, and they also talk about safety considerations for AI, human AI collaboration, and also they provide liability framework. So if you look at the Google AI governance, you can get some very interesting information from the reports that they have published. So additional areas I think that we should be looking into are accountability and transparency of these AI techniques. Okay, so data science governance is a combination of data governance and AI governance. I put it as a question mark. We believe that while data governance is an essential part of data science governance, right? For example, we introduced the notion of data supply chain management that drew parallels between supply chain and data product. We also discussed information sharing in supply chain management. So we need to re-examine this within the context of data science governance, right? So data science governance also includes additional areas such as fairness and safety in addition to data, right? Fairness, safety, all of that sort of merges with AI governance. Data science also includes aspects of machine learning. Therefore, areas such as fairness in DS, trustworthy DS are being explored as part of data science governance. So we discuss various aspects of data science and AI governance. So what are they? Protecting AI against cyber attacks and privacy violations. And if you listen to my keynote address, I talk quite a bit about this. It should be very high priority for every organization. Has the company developed appropriate protection and detection methods for cyber attacks of the AI and data science governance? As I mentioned in my keynote, what's the point in having AI techniques, being applied to all the applications if these AI techniques are going to be attacked? right? Is it possible for the ML algorithms to analyze the vast amounts of data being collected and subsequently violate the privacy of the individuals? Are appropriate cybersecurity and privacy measures being adopted so that the AI techniques are trustworthy? Right? Cybersecurity and privacy consideration are an important aspect of both AI and data science governance, and we'll talk about it later. Okay, so another aspect is risks and insurance, right? Before developing AI techniques and incorporating them to all these products, you have to carry out an in-depth risk analysis. What does it mean by risk for AI techniques, AI systems? In the real world, we know that people have biases, a lot of unfairness goes on, and discrimination. These biases can be transformed into the AI techniques, right? Therefore, it is important for the corporation to carry out a thorough risk analysis and take out AI insurance, because cyber insurance is really getting very popular and important, because as we hear of cyber attacks, right, companies have to take insurance so that the company is not sued for unfair practices. Based on the risk analysis carried out, right, the company can then develop an AI strategy and address areas such as I said, explainability, fairness, safety, human AI, collaboration, liability frameworks, accountability, and transparency. These are the 7 things. 5 have been already provided by Google, and I added 2 more. Okay, so AI and DS governance continuing. AI and DS has to be integrated with the business strategy, because the companies, the bottom line for them is profits, right? And so what is the point in having AI and DS strategy that is so expensive that it's going to reduce the profits? Since AI and DS are being incorporated into the operations of almost every corporation, they must be aligned with the business strategy. One cannot develop a business strategy that violates the legal and ethical considerations. So you cannot have unsafe AI, AI with bias, AI that is not fair. Similarly, one cannot focus entirely on fairness and bias at the expense of making the AI techniques useless, right? If you constantly worry about, you need fairness and bias, but you also want effective AI techniques. That is, there has to be a balance between the usefulness of the AI techniques and its safety, fairness, and bias. We need an AI expert who understands the issues involved surrounding policy and ethics and gives sensible advice to the corporation to develop an integrated business AI strategy. Okay, so extending the governance frameworks to include the board participation, right? So there are various cyber frameworks, corporate governance. These include the NIST. They've come up with National Institute of, Standards and Technology, as well as COBIT, Control Objectives for Information and Related Technology framework that has been developed by ACASA. These frameworks specify the best practices of various cybersecurity management. So there are a lot of frameworks for cybersecurity. Such frameworks and the liability frameworks, Google has discussed a liability framework. We have to we have to examine them for AI governance. Also, we need to include the roles and responsibilities of both the corporate officers, the board members, the developers. So I'm going to come to that in a minute. What are the roles? And what are the roles of the vendors, the contractors, the employees, the whole lot? Okay, the next point is evaluation, certification, accreditation. One really great thing we have in cybersecurity is that once you develop all these commercial products, right, they are being evaluated by a third party, independent third party, to see how secure they are. You know, we've been doing that since the 1980s, right? 83 was when the first criteria was published, the Orange Book, and now we have the common criteria, you know, spanning across multiple countries. Once the systems are evaluated, then they are certified for use and accredited. But we don't have any such thing for AI systems, right? So I believe that we need a similar approach, because AI is being used, as I said, for almost every application. So we need criteria to evaluate these techniques, right? Are they fair? Are the AI techniques secure? Are they, let's see, are they balanced? Are they biased? Are they, those are things that we need to look at. Are they transparent? They have to be accountable. This way, the systems can be evaluated for explainability, fairness, bias, and other criteria. So that's something we have to develop. Hopefully, organizations like NIST could develop such a criteria. And this is something I've talked in my keynote address. So very briefly, I'm saying there are two things. Both cybersecurity, AI, fast growing fields, right? So you have to collect, storage, manipulate data. So as a result, there are privacy issues. Various regulations are being proposed to handle big data. So that's privacy of the individuals is not violated. For example, even if personally identifiable information is removed from the data, when data is combined with other data, individual can be identified, right? So massive amounts of data being collected, and these data could be big data applications in cybersecurity. I talked in my keynote, stream analytics for data for cybersecurity problems. For example, organization can outsource activities such as identity management, intrusion detection, and malware, but they have to be, you can apply machine learning to look at malware analysis and so on. The question is, how can the developments of AIDS techniques be used to solve security problems? How can we ensure, that's very important, that such techniques are secure and they can adapt to the adversarial attack? So I discussed this in my previous, in my keynote address. While AIDS techniques have many applications in cybersecurity, right? And the cyber attacks can also occur on AI systems. That's what I was stressing in my earlier presentation, including machine learning and planning systems. Imagine what happens if the machine learning techniques are attacked, right? What happens if such systems are being used in pacemakers and automobiles? There's some work right now on adversarial machine learning. It's one of the hottest areas, I believe, in cybersecurity. Furthermore, the machine learning techniques have the capability to analyze large quantities of data, extract patterns. And what happens if those patterns are highly sensitive, right? They can, result in highly classified information or violate the privacy. Data privacy should be of utmost importance to the success of a company. So now we come to the responsibilities of the corporate officers, right? You have this now CISOs, Chief Information Security Officer. More or less it's accepted now, right? Companies have CISO. And CISO is getting quite a bit of prominence. In an earlier paper I published last year, I talked about cybersecurity governance. So the discussions in the previous charts have shown that, like cybersecurity, AI and DS governance is also vital to the company. On the one hand, the company must ensure that sophisticated AI and DS techniques are applied to give them a competitive edge, right? So this includes AI and DS into not SARIs, it's areas, such as medicine, finance, and manufacturing. Therefore, we need a chief AI officer to promote AI and data science in the corporation. So that, I think, is going to be important, because if every company is adopting AI, chief information officer, can he or she, satisfy, can he or she also handle AI governance? Or can chief data officer can handle AI governance? But since AI is really exploding, I really believe that we need a chief AI officer, can also look at data science, working side by side with the chief information officer. My companies also have data officer. These CDOs could be combined with CAIO. What is equally important, I call it KO, that person must have a deep understanding of AI and use of AI in an unbiased and fair manner, okay? So continuing, the KO must work with CDO and CISO, and they have to ensure AI techniques are not attacked, or at least provide effective solutions to combat the attacks. The KO must work with CFO, Chief Financial Officer, because he or she is going to be very responsible for the bottom line, the business, and possibly the CDO, to ensure that the AI strategies are intertwined with the business and financial strategies. What's the point in having a business when AI, sort of is dominating, and then it's not intertwined, right? They are going in different directions. You could have utter chaos. So while a CFO is crucial, we all know that, I believe that the company must have a KO to work with the CFO to ensure that AI is not only to benefit the company, but it also must be used for the good of society. KOs must be taken seriously, and they must have authority and funding, right? You can't have a KO in name only. You have to give him or her funding. Usually a CFO's job is to ensure the company's finances are in order. Costs may impact the amount spent on AI solutions. This is why a company needs someone like a KO who is an advocate for AI. Just like I said, in cybersecurity governance, you must have a CISO with responsibility, perhaps reporting to CEO, right? So that he or she can put together some good cybersecurity practices. We need a similar thing here. In the same way, such an officer or the CDO must be an advocate for data science, right? So responsibilities, many corporations include cybersecurity as part of responsibilities of CIO or the CTO. But I have argued that we need a CISO, perhaps reporting to CEO. So in the same way, should a CAIO, right? Spelling error. CDO report to the CEO and be an advocate for AI and data science solutions. Now, there's this question, should everybody report to the CEO? So there has to be some structure. It depends also on the company. Finally, as I mentioned, every corporation must have AIDS strategy. This strategy cannot be a standalone strategy. It has to be intertwined with the business and financial as well as the cybersecurity strategies. This is why all of them have to work together. CEO, CFO, CEO, CISO, KO, whatever, right? This means corporate board must have members who are knowledgeable about AIDS so that they can ask the right questions. Remember, the board has a fiduciary duty, right? They must do their, they must have due diligence and they must do their job, right? So they have to ask right questions at the board meetings. So my last chart, the paper has discussed the governance aspects of AI and DS and stressed the need and the importance of having AI and DS expert as a board member. Question then is, how does the company go about selecting such an expert? There are many people who are claiming that they are AI experts. Everybody has got into AI. Okay. Fortunately for me, I did quite a bit of work at Honeywell developing expert systems, the early AI systems, and also looked at AI for security and AI. This was in the 1980s. So I can sort of claim, although I haven't done a lot of work in AI, but I have developed expert systems in the 1980s and looked at security for AI, and I've published papers in the 1980s, right, mid to late 1980s. So they also have to understand policy, legal and ethical considerations, right? So we're talking about someone in the executive team. He or she has to understand not only the business aspects, but also needs to know the various ways the AI techniques could be attacked, and also look at fairness and bias and transparency, accountability. That is, the expert has to work closely with the CISO of the company, right? And he or she also needs to ensure that the AI techniques being employed by the company are fair, unbiased, and trustworthy. So what I'm saying is that the AI, let's see, how do I get this back? Oh, stop sharing. So then, okay. So this was like an 18-minute presentation. So I know I sort of rushed through several charts, but I think I've sort of almost kept on time. So it's just about 18, I think. So, so what I'm really wanting to say, why I wanted to present this at this conference, because this is really a very strong data science, and also information related conference, right? The name is information reuse and integration. But then when you are relying so much on the information, then there's also data science, and there's also AI, right? AI techniques being applied for integrating information, even for reusing information, right? The AI strategies. And many companies, as I said, they are embracing AI now, right? It's really becoming the cornerstone for many companies. And so we really need someone who can understand AI at the executive level, because these AI techniques, not only they have to be secure, they also have to be fair and balanced, and also they have to be transparent, should not have bias. So that is why, because otherwise you can have chaotic situations. And that is why you need someone who really understands AI and data science to be at the corporate executive level, and also interact with the board. And the board should also be asking questions. And this is going to become more and more important. Thank you very much.